buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator. Welcome back to the show. By the way, FM translator means it's translating the signal from AM into FM. Somebody in the chat room asked, what exactly does an FM translator do? It spreads out the broadcast to further areas. It's like a repeater, but it puts it on the FM dial instead of the AM dial. So welcome to the program, and thank you for coming in and joining us. It is the Tuesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, and we are ready to go. Tuesdays are always busy. They're packed, jam-packed full of goodness. I mean, I don't know. I think goodness might be relative sometimes because it's usually pain and suffering, where we try to explain all the truths that are out there that nobody else seems to see except for us. Sometimes I wonder, are we the ones that are mad instead of everybody else? I just don't know. I'm just not sure. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is waiting in the wings. We're about to do the weekly top three and dive into that. We've got some headlines and some other discussions in hour two, followed up, of course, by Chris Story, the man from Homer, who will come in and give us the full PMA boost for the week here in hour two. But let's get started with the weekly top three because we got a lot of ground to cover. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest, and he joins us every week for a full hour of, I mean, I'm calling it goodness, Brad, but sometimes it just feels so painful, right? I mean, it's hard. It's hard sometimes.
Good is bad or bad is good, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, something. So Brad Keithley comes in and talks to us about the three big subjects that he thinks are important for the week. Of course, we're only today is 1 week from today. The session launches in the legislature, and it will be, well, I mean, I think it's just it's a la land. Let's put it that way. I don't know how they seem to be living in a completely different world than we're living in. But we're going to go through that. Brad, welcome to the program. I guess let's just dive into it. The AK legislature, are they going to fund this Hail Mary pass that we've been talking about? I mean, we've heard it. Glenn Farn, that's the name that's been whispered around, and I dived into it a little bit yesterday, but you're going to give us some more details on this. So should the legislature fund the Hail Mary? Let's get into it.
Well, Michael, let's cover the Hail Mary part first. Governor Dunleavy and others announced a little over a week ago that the AKLNG, the Alaska Gas Line project, had entered into I don't know what you call preliminary agreements to agree.
Yeah,
with an undisclosed.
I thought the wording on that was weird. So it's a framework. It's an agreement framework to an agreement. So you're agreeing to agree sometime down the road. I don't think that. I mean, I wouldn't sell a house on that kind of agreement. Would you?
Well, here's the problem they're facing. The problem they're facing is they're coming into this legislature, and AGDC, Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation, the board said last April, we sort of went through this in last week's show, the board said last April that they would wind down the project at the end of 2024 if they hadn't reached agreements with respect to funding the project, if they hadn't brought together a project. So faced with that, the administration was sort of faced with the decision, well, do we go ahead and wind it down, or do we do something else? And so they had these agreements to agree with an undisclosed company that they held a big press conference to announce with Dunleavy himself saying, the equivalent of, oh, we're further along than we've ever been before. And I've been a skeptic, but now I'm a believer, and that sort of stuff. And that was really motivated. That whole thing was motivated by the deadline that the board itself, the AGDC board itself, had put on itself last year. So they had to show something coming into this legislature that there had been progress, and the agreement to agree is sort of as far as they had gotten and what they had to show for it. So they throw that out there, undisclosed partner. Within, I think, 24 hours, Jeff Landfield had the name. Landfield has his sources. Had the name, put it out there in a tweet, and that sort of motivated everybody to admit, well, yeah, that's who it was, Glenn Farn. And the reaction I've had from my friends in the industry, throughout the industry, LNG industry, is basically who?
Yeah.
Glenn Farn does have projects. They've got some projects down in Latin America. They've got some projects other places. They've got 2 LNG, lower 48 LNG projects that they've bought into and are managing, neither of which has reached FID, final investment decision. But they certainly aren't a pipeline company, a big pipeline company, which is what I think Frank Richards, the head of AGDC, the head of the Alaska Pipeline project, was trying to imply. They certainly aren't one of the major pipeline companies or one of the major LNG export companies that you think of. And so what it strikes me as, having seen this sort of thing in the industry over the past 50 some odd years, what it strikes me as is we had to get somebody, or else we're going to have to wind this project down. These are the guys that were willing to enter into agreements to agree, so we could justify continuing the project. And it's sort of like a Hail Mary. We couldn't get anybody else. We couldn't get any of the big names in the industry to sign on to this thing, to participate in this thing. And so we got these guys, and that's what we got. And so we're going to sort of run with that and see how far that can take us. And that's sort of what the impression is that I've gotten, both from listening to the press release last week, from talking to friends in the industry and trying to understand who Glenn Farn is, that this is sort of what we've come to. Here's the question. So Glenn Farn is the company that has said, AGDC previously had said, that the person the company they were talking to wouldn't go forward unless there was a backup commitment by the state to refund the money that they would put into the research necessary to get to the FID decision, the final investment decision.
Right.
That they wouldn't go forward unless the state was on the hook to refund the money that they would put into that, all of $50 million.
Right.
And so ADA, another state agency, ADA stepped up and said, we will guarantee the $50 million. We will guarantee to refund the money to, now we know, Glenn Farn, in the event that Glenn Farn spends all this money and can't get to FID, can't get to a final investment decision, and final investment decision means they got people out there willing to fund the project.
Right.
Can't get to the project. And so turns out ADA didn't have the authority to do that, doesn't have the $50 million to do that without legislative authorization. So this is going to come full circle into the legislature, into the legislature this coming session. The governor has included the $50 million to provide the money to ADA to have this backup. The governor has included that in a supplemental budget, and that supplemental budget will go to the legislature, and it's up to the legislature to decide whether to pass that appropriate that $50 million to ADA to provide the backup to the commitment that Glenn Farn says it needs before it will go forward, even with the research necessary to get to FID. And the question to the legislature is, are you willing to fund it? Are you willing to put the $50 million on the line? Because in all honesty, that $50 million is likely to be pulled down. Glenn Farn has never done a project of this scope. They've never financed even if you accumulate all their financing together, they've never financed anything on the order of magnitude that we're talking about with AGDC. It truly is a Hail Mary to, whoever would stand up and sign the agreements. It truly is a Hail Mary. And the high likelihood is that this thing isn't going to go. And the state and ADA is going to be on the hook for the $50 million, and the state's going to be on the hook for the $50 million. So the question of the legislature is going to be, are you willing to appropriate this $50 million to ADA to finance this Hail Mary?
Care to make a guess? Because I'm feeling like these guys are like, oh yeah, we gotta, I feel like they're in a whole different world than we are, and they're like, sounds good to us, let's do it. That's my base feeling is that somebody is going to say yes. What do you think?
Well, I guess there's two questions. Should they say yes, and will they say yes? And you might be right on the will they say yes, because everybody seems gung-ho that we got to have projects in this state, even if they're never going to go, and even if we're spending money throwing money down the rabbit hole.
Most of the legislature, including a lot of the conservative members, are on record saying we've got to have Alaska gas. It's this emotional thing, right? It's like they've been ignoring LNG in favor of trying to figure out a way to noodle it, and now here's somebody put it on a plate for them to say, oh look, this will fix it. I have a feeling that it's gonna. I have a feeling it's gonna pass. I would say $5 as it passes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't pass. Let me try it. Let me try
I agree.
From my direction. It shouldn't pass. We've got conservatives out there saying we shouldn't spend $50 million on this. We shouldn't spend $50 million on that. We shouldn't spend it on K through 12. We shouldn't spend it on there's a long list of things that fiscal conservatives have said we shouldn't be doing. And this is another one. This is throwing good money, what's still good money, after chasing this gas line dream for decades. It is throwing an additional $50 million on the fire. Now, some people say, well, it's only $50 million, but $50 million is a sum of money, especially when we're in a deficit situation already, especially when we're facing a $1.5 billion deficit already. It is throwing an additional amount of money on that deficit. And you got it. To me, you've got to weigh the pluses and the minuses. The plus is, you get to carry on the charade for a little bit longer with AGDC. The minus is, at the end of the day, the money's going to go away. The money's going to disappear. ADA's going to have to pay the guarantee back to Glen Farm, because again, these guys have never done a project of this size. They've never even remotely raised money along these lines. And the odds are it's not gonna work. So why are we throwing $50 million more on this Hail Mary when the high likelihood is it's not gonna work?
Yeah, well, again, this is the problem, and I think this is, in my mind, this is just somebody trying to milk more money out of this dying it's kicking and screaming, and it's making its way towards death, and somebody's just trying to milk a little bit more money out of it on the way by, whether that's the companies who are doing the all the work or the agencies themselves. It just seems like this is the last gasp here before they get let go. Can we get another 50 million out of them? That's kind of what it feels like in the long run.
Yeah, I think the AGDC board had it right last April when they sent the letter to the legislature and said, look, if we can't get this thing financed, if we can't get a project put together by the end of the year, we're going to start closing it down. Well, we got to the end of the year, and all you got was Glen Farm. All you got was agreements to agree with Glen Farm, with a company that won't even put up the money to do their own analysis and get it to FID, with a company that needs a backstop from the state even to do that. That's not a realistic deal.
Yeah, it's never a good sign. We can all look at it and see that the math is not. Just look at the Woods Mackenzie report with the 80% subsidy. It still doesn't come in at world price on gas, even with an 80% subsidy. So, that's best case, rosiest scenario. And you got to ask that question. 1 minute, Brad.
Well, there's one other thing, and we can carry this into the break, but NSTAR has got itself messed up in this deal too. And I think that there's a concern I have about where this deal's going to go, where this deal's going to take Cook Inlet, take MStar's solution if we extend it out.
All right, well, we'll keep up on this. We'll continue on. The weekly top 3 continues. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. You can find him at ak4sb.com. We'll continue right now in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Brad Keithley is our guest. We're continuing on this discussion. Brad, this whole thing is just, I mean, again, to me, I look at it, we've talked about it enough. I'm not an oil and gas expert. I've never pretended to be, but I've had enough conversations with folks like you and others that, you know, make me understand that it's just not economical. It's just the economics of this investment-wise just don't work out. And again, going back to the Wood Mackenzie report, which is supposedly supposed to bolster the argument for in-state gas, even the rosiest assumption is that it doesn't even, what was $2.50, $3 more than what market prices were at that point, even with an 80% subsidy, meaning the state or the feds or somebody else is on the hook for 80% of the construction costs. I mean, you don't need 50 million to figure out if that's going to work or not. They're not going to reach FID at that point.
You know, so let's look at this for a moment from Glenfarne's perspective. They want to be a player. They're trying to be a player. They're trying to, you know, get themselves into the major leagues. Here's a company, AGDC, out there that can't attract anybody else, can't attract any of the majors to go into a relationship with them. They throw this hook out at Glenfarne and says, look, will you work with us on FID? And I tell you what, if it doesn't hit, we'll pay you back for all of your expenses. So from Glenfarne's standpoint, they want to be a major. They want to be a major player. They're sitting out there. They're going, nobody else is going to go into this deal. We can go into the deal and we get our money back if it doesn't pan out. In the 1 in 1,000th chance it does pan out, we may be a major player.
Right.
But there's no cost to us other than maybe a little diversion of management time. No cost to us going down this road.
No, I mean, and I mean, let's face it, you would never, I mean, how long did they keep under wraps under Walker's administration? They had people that they were working with, companies that they were, and it was never leaked. I mean, this leaked in less than 24 hours. Don't tell me that wasn't intentional. Don't tell me Glenfarne wasn't like, yeah, put the name out there so they know that we're the ones that are working. I mean, you know what I mean? It's a prestige thing. It's theater at this point. My fear is that the legislature, with all the legislators that we've talked to, who are so, you know, spun up about, we've got to have Alaska gas, we've got to have it. LNG is not the answer. We could be cut off at any moment. You know, all these things. I just feel like they may buy it hook, line, and sinker, and that's kind of the scary part.
Well, if fiscal conservatives vote for it, please don't try to convince me again you're a fiscal conservative. I mean, if you're a fiscal conservative, you weight risk, you weight the potential payoff, you weight the cost, you weight where you are in terms of cash flow, in terms of your debt situation. You weight all those things, and when you weight all those things, this is not $50 million. This is not a good use of $50 million. If you claim to be a fiscal conservative and you nevertheless vote for this, please don't tell me you're a fiscal conservative again, because you're just the same way as the K through 12 people, the K through 12 industry, the university industry, the defined benefits industry. You're just throwing money, good money after bad, in a situation where we don't have a surplus, where we don't have money to be wasting. We're $1.5 billion in deficit, and you're just throwing another 50 million, another half 100 million in there on top of that. Don't claim to be a fiscal conservative. If you want to vote for it, claim to be something else.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But don't claim that you're a fiscal conservative voting for it.
No, it's frustrating to watch, and I have a feeling that this entire session is going to be an exercise in frustration. I mean, I think this is much ado about nothing, quite honestly. I don't think they may spend the 50 million, but I mean, I think this is a pipe dream and it's a distraction. And the legislature has gotten very good over the last 20 or 25 years at distractions, being distracted and creating distractions.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with the real problem, which is the $1.5 billion deficit. So they create all these other issues to go off on because they don't want to deal with the core issue that's sitting there like the elephant in the room. And that's as true for the progressives as it is now for the fiscal conservatives if they go off on this tangent.
All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We're about to jump deep into it here. Please like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Guy is so mean to me. I don't know why. What did I ever do to him? Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. We move on to number 2 of the weekly top 3, which is who's leaving Alaska, or otherwise, who's not moving to Alaska. The inflow and outflow. We keep hearing, Brad, man, we've got an out-migration crisis. And then they said, well, but as many people didn't move as we thought wouldn't move. And the thing is, but it's a crisis. I mean, they're using it to justify everything from pension reform to everything else. What does it actually look like? You've got some thoughts here on this.
So a couple of things generates this segment, Michael. One, last week, you had a question from somebody who said, well, I didn't know it was middle and lower income Alaska families that are leaving the state. And then the second, in the meantime, there was an announcement by the Department of Labor and Workforce Development this past week. Alaska's population grew by 0.3% from 2023 to 2024, but we have a continued loss in outmigration. There's a lot of numbers that that the Department of Labor have thrown out in terms of where the population shifts are going on, and they're showing it regionally, and they're showing it statewide, and they're showing it by age bracket, who's moving in, who's moving out, where the outmigration is, where the problem is. The one thing that Department of Labor has not done, and all these numbers that they're floating out there do not do, is break down where the inflows and outflows are, what the net is by income bracket. And you can do that, and we have done that. You can do that by looking at IRS data, because IRS keeps track of the number of people filing and the number of people covered by the filings, the number of people in the family, in the household filing. They keep track of both the number of people filing and the number of people in the households, total number of people covered by income bracket. And since 2015, coincidentally, they've kept it by age. They've divided the inflows and outflows, the number of filings by age. So you can see a breakdown by income bracket by age as well. So following up on last week's comment and following up on the Department of Labor stuff, we've broken down the numbers by income bracket. So if you'll throw up the first chart, I'll walk through these. The first chart shows the percent change in individuals. These are the total number of individuals covered by the filings, covered by the IRS filings, income tax filings. By income bracket, the change from 2015, when the IRS started accounting for in greater detail for some of this stuff, to 2021, the latest year for which data is available from the IRS. The red bars are where the IRS data indicates we've lost filers, lost Alaskans. The blue bars indicate where we've gained Alaskans. And the distinction that this shows is clear, that we've lost Alaskans in every bracket below $100,000. that we have had a loss in the number of people covered by the number of residents covered by the IRS filings, the tax filings, in every bracket below 100,000. That's where we're losing people. In the brackets above 100,000, we've gained. Now, in the bracket between 100,000 and 200,000, the gain is modest. But once you get above 200,000, you have huge increases in the number of people that are in the state that are falling in these brackets. For example, in the 200,000 to 500,000 bracket, you have a gain of 40.9, 41% of people covered in the tax filings. From 500,000 to $1 million, you have a gain of 50%, and from $1 million up, you have a gain of more than 65% in the number of people in the state. So you can see from this that population wise, the population that's covered by the income tax filings, population wise, we have a decline in middle and lower income Alaska families with incomes of less than $100,000, and an increase in families in family size of families that are have income greater than $100,000. Let's go to the next slide. The elderly slide. There we go. So this breaks down. So the IRS also breaks down the data. Began in 2015, breaking down the data between tax returns that for the head of the family was 60 years old or greater, and tax returns where the head of the family was less than 60 years old. So roughly that breaks down into working age and retirement age, or retirement on your way to retirement, or retirement age. And this is the chart that shows what the IRS calls elderly, 60 and above returns. The number of returns for people 60 and above, for families headed by somebody 60 and above, all are blue with one exception. The 10,000 to between 10,000 and 25,000 income bracket is at zero. It stayed even between 2015 and 2021. But every other income bracket where you have retirement or near retirement age families headed by somebody in retirement or near retirement age grew, both middle and lower income and upper income. Upper income grew in the same order of magnitude as the population as a whole, as the population covered by the IRS filings as a whole. The next slide is the one that really tells the story. So we know we're losing residents in middle and lower income Alaska families. We know that the elderly segment is growing. So where's the loss? And the loss is obvious, and this chart shows it. The loss is in working age middle and lower income Alaska families. That's where we're losing population. That's where the net outmigration is occurring. In every bracket below $100,000, every income bracket below $1,100, we've lost families. We're losing households between 2015 and 2021. In every income bracket above $100,000, we're gaining residents. We have net in-migration in families in households above $100,000. Now, between $100,000 and $200,000, it's very slight. It's 0.3%. Essentially, that's an even. We've stayed relatively even with families, with households between $100,000 and $200,000. But once you get above $200,000, there's been growth. We are adding families. That's not where outmigration is occurring. The outmigration is occurring in the red. It's occurring below $100,000, and there's varying percentages of people that we're losing in the middle and lower income Alaska brackets. But that's where we're losing people according to the IRS data. So what this is telling me is, yes, we have net outmigration, but that doesn't tell me enough. It doesn't tell me where the net outmigration is occurring. The DOL data, the Department of Labor data, will tell you where it's occurring geographically, but it doesn't tell you by income bracket where we're losing people. This data, the data from the IRS, does, and it's telling us that we're losing people Where we are losing people is in the middle and lower income brackets. In fact, in the upper income brackets, we're gaining people. We have net immigration. In the upper income brackets, we're losing people in the lower income brackets. One other thing that you then ask, well, why? Why are we losing people in those income brackets? It's because their income relative to where it could be, income relative to the cost of living, income relative to the upper income brackets is going down. It's going down because of PFD cuts. We are taking money, we are taxing the very people that are leaving. So when somebody says, oh, I'm concerned about net out migration, we've got to do something. We've got to do defined benefits. We've got to do, we've got to do K through 12. We've got to do this, that, or the other thing that will solve net out migration. Well, the question is, who are you going to have pay for it?
Right.
If you have middle and lower income Alaska families continue to pay for it through PFD cuts, it's just going to be a death spiral. You're just going to continue pushing. You're just going to continue penalizing, continue raising the economic barriers on the very people that are already leaving. We know they're leaving. We know that they're leaving while the upper income brackets are coming. We know they're leaving, and you're just going to increase. If you're going to fund these additional things through additional PFD cuts, you're just going to push harder on the people that are already leaving.
Well, what I found interesting in your charts, and for those of you on the radio who can't see the charts, you can go back and watch them on Facebook. But what's interesting is that you can see in all three charts that percentile, or those quintiles there in the under $25,000 a year were the hardest hits. And this is from 2015 onward. So this is right when the PFD cut started. 2017 is when the PFD cut started. And you could see that, 20%, 28% in reduction. When you go to the first chart again, you go back under 25,000 has a 22% change in individuals. It's driving more of people, especially those who are in the lower income brackets, below that poverty line, and causing them to have to think about this. This is it. When you got a 65% increase in people making $1 million or more, or a 50% increase in people making $500,000 or more, and you've got a 22%, 23% decrease in people who are $25,000 and less, that just shows you this is exactly the PFD is a huge driver in what we're looking at here.
Yeah, and Michael, it's a huge driver. It's a huge driver also middle income Alaska families. We emphasize the impact on lower income Alaska families because by far they have larger percentages, but they're also negative percentages. They're also having an impact on middle income Alaska families. If you look at the average tax rate across all families that the PFD cuts represent, we are taking more from middle income Alaska families than we would if we used alternative revenue measures. So, and you see the red in the middle income Alaska families as well. Not as big as in the lower income Alaska families because we're pushing them harder. We're taking more as a percent of their income, but we're pushing middle income Alaska families out also. And the ones that we are rewarding through PFD cuts, because we're taking it out heavily disproportionately out of middle and lower income Alaska families. The top tier Alaska families, the upper income Alaska families are suffering a very small percentage share of their income, losing a very small share of income through PFD cuts. And they're growing. That's growing because they're not seeing the costs of government. They're not experiencing the costs of government. Those are all being shoved down. So those people are living. I think it's fascinating when you look at, we're losing people. All the data agrees that we're losing people. But I think it's fascinating when you look at it on an income bracket basis and see where we're losing people, not geographically, but where in terms of income.
That tells the story. Definitely tells the story, and it's eye-opening to look at with those numbers. Again, you can go check out these charts. Brad, do you have these charts posted up somewhere yet, or?
They will be in the Friday column, in this coming week's Friday column.
On the Alaska Landmine. All right. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3 continues. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We got more coming up, the weekly top 3 and number 3 when we return. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after these messages.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, in the break with Brad Keithley. Yeah, I mean, when you look at those charts, Brad, you realize that I mean, the PFD, you could see where it just stabs the middle class like right in the heart. And it's it's crazy to watch. And you get more and more folks who are in those upper income brackets, and of course they want to protect what they have, so that's why we're continuing on with the business as usual. They don't want to see any other revenue measures because they're barely being touched by PFD cuts. It doesn't affect them at all. They're totally happy with the way things are going right now.
And Michael, it spins off into all sorts of areas. All the legislators are now in the top 20% as a result of the pay raise that the legislature gave themselves.
67% pay raise. Yep.
As a result of the pay raise they gave themselves, all the legislatures are now in the top 20%. They're not seeing the economics that are hitting in middle and lower income Alaska families. They may hear about it from those families if they talk to them, but they're not seeing it personally the way some of them used to in the old days before the pay raises. And when you talk about things like the $50 million for AGDC, oh, well, it's just $50 million. We'll throw it out there. Yeah, maybe it is a Hail Mary, but we'll just throw $50 in. Well, it's not their $50 million they're throwing into the pot. The $50 million will come out in the form of additional PFD cuts. That's where the marginal source of revenue is for past legislatures, and certainly it looks like for this legislature. And so it's not their money they're throwing in. They're throwing in somebody else's money, other people's money, to make these bets. They're not feeling it personally, and so it's showing up in a bunch of different ways. I mean, it's showing up in the legislature being indifferent to additional spending, being indifferent to making bets, $50 million bets on a Hail Mary. And this data shows who's paying for it.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating. Chris asks, he says, I may have missed it, and it sounds bad, but why specifically is net out migration a bad thing?
It reduces economic activity, reduces people who are going to small businesses, reduces people who are starting small businesses, reducing employees, and results in either higher wages, more bigger cost to small businesses to attract the same number of employees, or it results in bringing up temporary Alaskans. If you look at the numbers of the non-residents that we have working in the state, those numbers are going up. What's going on is we're filling in gaps in the workforce by bringing up additional non-residents who don't contribute to the state, who don't contribute to the economics of the state, don't go to the small businesses, don't go to the restaurants, don't buy at the local stores. They fly in, do their job, get their paycheck, fly out, and don't contribute to the economy of the state, and don't contribute to the cost of the state, because we don't have any way of recapturing, like in the other 49 states. Alaska doesn't have any way of recapturing a portion of the payments that the non-residents are receiving going out.
Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Let me see if there's anything else out here. Teresa says, just have a backup of 50 million to support the PFD. If not paid out by state statute, pay it out with a 50 million. I mean, again, 50 million is a drop in the bucket when it comes to the PFD, but again, 50 million here, to paraphrase Milton Friedman, 50 million here, 50 million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, right? I mean, that's kind of where we're at. And Harold says anyone under $80,000 a year is struggling. I mean, I agree. And you could see it, and you could see that they're voting with their feet on the way out the door. That's what's happening right now. Right, Brad?
Yeah, exactly right, Michael. I mean, they're leaving. People with across the board, working age Alaska families, the kind that you desperately want to attract, they're leaving at income levels below $100,000. They're leaving. They're not coming. I mean, however you want to phrase it, we have net out migration among working age Alaska families below $100,000.
And Anthony makes a comment. He says, as a tradesman, the only thing that's kept me from having to exfil from Alaska is that my billing rates and take home have to increase with the economy. Compared to, let's say, 2015 to now, my rates have almost doubled, but my overall living quality has remained absolutely the same. More money required for the same experience. I truly feel for people working for big companies that are locked into a pay scale. No idea how they do it. They don't. That's why they're leaving. You're 100% right. I mean, you're lucky in that your trades can scale with the economy, because that is a tough thing right there. And they're not making it. They're leaving. That's why those folks are leaving. So it's kind of an interesting sale here. All right. And of course, we'll have more outflow as that goes. Harold's talking about his kids going outside, his kids just taking jobs outside. It's going to happen, because unless we turn this around, it's just going to, you're not going to be able to get a start in Alaska like you used to be able to.
Yeah,
all right.
We're not providing them with the economic ability to sustain themselves. So
no, not unless they go to work for government. I guess that's the only answer there. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Number 3 is dead ahead. Please like and share, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing right now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and the weekly top 3. We're on to number 3 here, Brad. Don't worry, folks. The pain will leave shortly. It'll be fine. The final one is energy royalty relief is coming. But as we've talked about on this program many times, it's coming at the expense of everybody. Everybody's going to pay for this in the long run. Brad, let's hit it.
Well, there's an article in the January 10th Alaska Beacon. It's reporting on a legislative panel that was interviewed or had questions asked of it by the RDC, the Resource Development Council in Alaska. And the headline is, state lawmakers plan to continue to focus on the need for new Cook Inlet natural gas. And when you get down into the details of the article, it's talking about the bills that will be introduced this session by various legislators to provide royalty relief, that is, reduce the state take, reduce or eliminate the state take from the development of Cook Inlet gas as a way of subsidizing the development of that gas to come into Cook Inlet. Here's my point about this issue. We don't need royalty relief in order to, if there is Cook Inlet gas, in order to incentivize the development of Cook Inlet gas. And my evidence for that is in a contract that NSTAR entered into with Fury, John Hendricks's Fury company, Hex company, entered into with him to provide additional gas into the Cook Inlet. Hendricks had filed for royalty relief before entering into this contract, had been asking the administration for royalty relief before entering into this contract. But then NSTAR and Hendricks entered into the contract, and this is what the contract provides. The contract's on file with the RCA as it's required to be under the RCA's rules because the RCA has to approve it. And this is what the contract provides. It provides a price, $12.30 per MCF for contract year 9 and then the contract years thereafter. But that price is predicated on the grant of royalty relief. If royalty relief isn't granted by the administration, that contract provides that NSTAR will pay the additional amount of up to $13.69, which is to cover the amount of the royalty relief. NSTAR will cover that additional amount and pay it under the contract. So the effect of royalty relief isn't going to the producer. Under this contract, the effect of royalty relief goes to NSTAR and flows through NSTAR to NSTAR's ratepayers. It's essentially a subsidy of NSTAR's ratepayers by the state. The state would otherwise get full royalty under the NSTAR contract. The state would otherwise get full royalty if it hadn't granted royalty relief, and NSTAR would have, and the producer wouldn't have been hurt because NSTAR would have paid the additional amount necessary to elicit the supplies to enter into the contract. The only benefit of the royalty relief is going to NSTAR's customers. Who's paying the royalty relief? Well, it turns out it's going to come out of the PFD.
Be you and me.
Turns out it's going to come out of statewide. It's going to come out of the pocket of everybody, because with reduced revenue, by giving royalty relief and that reduced revenue, the state isn't going to have the full amount of revenue, and as a consequence of that, it's going to have to backfill from additional sources to fill in the revenue it otherwise would get from the producer. And that's going to come from additional PFD cuts. And so you're going to have people in Bethel, people in Barrow, people in Dillingham, people in Fairbanks, people in Tok, people in Juneau, people in Ketchikan, all paying an additional amount in terms of, or all suffering an additional amount in terms of PFD cuts in order to subsidize NSTAR's customers. In order to flow that money through to NSTAR's customers. To me, everybody ought to pay their own way, right? If it costs an additional amount to get gas out of Cook Inlet, if that's what you want to do and you want to get additional gas out of Cook Inlet, then the people who benefit from Cook Inlet gas ought to pay for it. The people who benefit from that additional amount ought to pay for it. Not the people in Ketchikan, not the people in Juneau, not the people in Fairbanks, not the people in Nome, Barrow, throughout the remainder of the state. The people who get that gas ought to pay for it. But that's not the way we've set this up. And additional royalty relief, which is what they're talking about through the bills in the legislature, is just going to make this worse. If we do have additional gas supplies that are developed as a result of it, the additional royalty relief is just going to come at the expense of additional people statewide who are going to be subsidizing NSTAR. NSTAR's demonstrated, NSTAR and Hendricks have demonstrated in this contract that NSTAR is willing to pay the full amount necessary to develop additional Cook Inlet supplies. If there is additional Cook Inlet supplies to be developed, NSTAR's demonstrated their willingness to pay the additional amount. The producers demonstrated their willingness to take that additional amount and develop the additional supplies without royalty relief. Royalty relief is just a subsidy that the state's added. In that context, royalty relief is just a subsidy the state's adding on. And it gets worse, Michael. I mean, some of the bills give royalty relief not only for gas, but George Rauscher has a bill that would give royalty relief also for oil. New oil developed in the Cook Inlet. And why is that? Not because we need more oil, but they're trying to, by reducing the royalty on oil, they're trying to give additional revenues over to the gas side, because most wells in the Cook Inlet that produce oil produce gas along with it. So
Right.
if you lower the royalty for oil, you're just giving more revenue over to somebody who's producing gas.
And of course, this looks like this has a lot. I mean, we were questioning whether or not the $50 million for the Glenn Fard thing was going to come through. This has a lot better chance of passing, I think, based on all the discussions that we've had and the fact that we've been kicking this can down the road for the last 18 months. And the legislature is like, we've got to do something. Everybody said it's on their priority list. And if it's on somebody's priority list, that means somebody's going to get paid somewhere along the line.
Yeah, well, I mean, Michael, it's on their priority list because they don't feel the pain like the other 80% of Alaska families do. They don't feel the pain of additional PFD cuts. You know, Andy Josephson, who's supposedly an advocate for working Alaska families. Andy Josephson, well, it's not much. It's not much. It's just an additional, it's just a small amount to pay for additional to incentivize additional supplies. Well, there's two things wrong with that statement. It's not all that small. I mean, it's small to somebody who doesn't have to pay it, probably, but it's not all that small. But secondly, it's not eliciting additional supplies. Look, NSTAR's willing to pay the full market price for those additional supplies. They don't need royalty relief. They and the producers don't need royalty relief to enter into those contracts. That's what the new contract demonstrates. So we don't need it for additional supplies. You're just giving somebody money out of somebody else's pocket elsewhere in the state. You're just giving somebody money. That's all this is. It's not eliciting additional supplies. NSTAR's already willing to pay the full price. You're just giving NSTAR customers additional money out of the pockets of the people in the rest of the state. And, I guess you can do that if you're in the legislature, but it doesn't seem fair. And it doesn't seem like it's something that, if we talk about that the highest priority is to stop out migration and keep people in Alaska, it doesn't seem like it's something that's designed to do that, because you're taking additional money out of the people who've demonstrated they're willing to leave the state and are in fact leaving the state now. You're just pushing them further and further and further down into the hole and pushing more and more and more of them out of the state. So, the legislature can do it, but they're certainly being hypocritical about it. Michael, I either lost you or you lost me, one of the two.
Sorry, I'm here. We lost you for a minute there, and we're just coming back now. So let's continue on here. Last 2 minutes here. Give us your final thoughts on this royalty relief, and what does it mean, and what should we do?
Well, we don't need royalty relief. We don't need royalty relief in the Cook Inlet. The HEX contract has demonstrated that NSTAR is willing to pay full price for whatever it takes to produce, to get additional production out of the Cook Inlet. Let's let NSTAR and the producers go ahead and negotiate that. Let's let them go ahead and enter into these contracts, and NSTAR willing to pay full price. And if the producers, if that's enough to elicit additional supplies from the producers, let's go ahead and let them do that. We don't need to be giving away state revenue, and then the producers pay the state the revenue the states do in terms of royalty. We don't need to be giving away that royalty. The state doesn't need to be giving away that royalty in order to elicit additional production. NSTAR is already willing to pay the price to elicit that additional production.
And Alaska LNG, imported LNG. That's all I can say. It's an answer. We've got to get to it. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thanks for coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. We're going to finish up the hour with Chris Story and more. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Be kind, love one another, live well. Yeah, sorry about that, Brad. You dropped off, and then I lost connection to everything for a second on the StreamYard side. So I don't know what was going on, but let me say here, Ben Carpenter's in the chat room. He says, so Alaskans want to benefit from government fiscal policy by avoiding taxes and market rate gas. Seems to me that those who directly benefit from fiscal policy are the ones who will be able to afford to live here. That's the thing. They're ignoring the reality of all this stuff. You want to avoid taxes. You want to avoid market rate. It's not going to happen. You've got to do this. We've got to look at these things, and I'm surprised at the number of legislators who are, again, fiscal conservatives, who keep coming up with this. Well, we've got to have Alaskan gas. We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't import LNG. How are we going to afford to live here if we don't? If you want to put a $40 billion pipeline in the hopper and do all that and underwrite it and pay for it, or royalty relief or whatever mechanism you want to use, we're all paying for it at some point. Let's be honest about what the actual costs are here.
Yeah, it's more, Michael. I'm starting to develop the view. A lot of people say that it's the federal government trying to turn Alaska into a national park. That all of the federal government's actions are designed to turn Alaska into a national park. Well, I think the legislature is trying to turn Alaska into a haven for the top 20% non-residents and oil companies by protecting them from paying even full market price for what they're getting in terms of natural gas and in terms of other things, protecting them from paying full market price, protecting them from paying full market price for government by shoving the costs down on middle and lower income Alaska families. by saying we're going to take it through PFD cuts. We're going to take it out of the economies, out of the economics of middle and lower income Alaska families. We're going to protect the top 20% non-residents who aren't contributing anything, and the oil companies who aren't contributing anything more for the additional costs of government. They're just sort of, they're stuck at the 2013 terms in terms of what they're contributing to government. As government has grown, as additional spending has occurred, they haven't contributed any more to that. We're going to protect them. We're going to turn this into a Disneyland that protects those groups, and we're going to take it out of the high and middle and lower income Alaska families. And we can see what that's doing. It's driving middle and lower income Alaska families, residents, out of the state. They're leaving the state. Net out migration. The numbers are dropping in those income brackets, while the numbers in the protected group, the top 20%, are growing. So it's not only are we going to turn Alaska into a national park for everybody else to enjoy, we're going to turn Alaska into this haven for the top 20% non-residents and oil companies by continually taking it out, making life more difficult for middle and lower income Alaska families.
So what you're saying is it's working as intended at this point. Right? I mean, that's what you're saying. You're saying, well, this is working as intended, because that's exactly what is happening. They're moving out, and the top 20% are growing, and everybody thinks it's fine, just fine. That's the crazy part.
And we're going to take additional steps like royalty relief that we don't need to do. The NSTAR HEX contract demonstrates we don't need to do that. We're going to take additional steps like that to protect them even more, so they don't even have to pay full market price for their gas now. We're going to take money out of Ketchikan and out of Juneau and out of the other parts of the state to help protect South Central from even paying the full market price for their gas.
Right. Well, I mean, add all the rural communities to that list who are having their PFD taken, and they're not really receiving anything from, the gas shortage, and I guess maybe through the PCE or something. But I mean, it's everybody's paying for this, and it's going to be a great idea. That's what we're going to hear. This is a great idea. That's exactly what's coming down the road. I guarantee it. Brad, final thoughts for today as we get ready. We're 1 week out. They're going to start on next Tuesday. We're going to have our weekly top three, and the legislature is going to start that day. What are your hopes for this legislative session?
Oh, I hope my hope is probably stillborn, but my hope is the fiscal conservatives actually show up and actually act as fiscal conservatives and try to tamp down on spending and try to tamp down on the subsidies. But that hope's going to be stillborn, because you've got fiscal conservatives, people who claim to be fiscal conservatives, who are already advocates of spending the $50 million to, pursue the AGDC pipe dream. And we've got fiscal conservatives, George Rauscher, who have already introduced bills to extend the royalty relief. But my hope is the fiscal conservatives actually wake up, that the $1.5 billion deficit we're running this year and in all subsequent years finally jolts them awake, and they start acting like fiscal conservatives and start drawing lines.
Well, we'll have to see. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top three wraps up. Again, you can check out Brad's column on the Alaska landmine on Friday, and he'll put those charts back in and write some context around it so that you understand what he's talking about. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board. Ben's final comment here: wealthy retirees don't even really need a private economy, just enough to meet their immediate needs. Change the oil in the car, provide groceries. He's right. I mean, I'm just so disappointed in the peninsula that they didn't send Ben Carpenter back. I'm so disappointed now.
Well, it's freed Ben up to make comments like that, and maybe freed Ben up to run for governor. So, there's still some hope out there.
Ben for governor? Ooh, his wife just screamed at you across the room. I can feel it right now. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's get to it. Hour 2 right now.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show. Streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you doing? Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Big Radio Show. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets and the weekly top 3. It was very good. If you missed it, you can go back and listen to it on the podcast. Wherever you find podcasts, including Spotify, iTunes, et cetera, go out there and check it out for sure. I've got some thoughts on some of the things that we talked about in Hour 1, and I want to share those with you. We're going to be joined at the end of the show by Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to come on board and share with us his thoughts and give us a little bit of a positivity boost, which we'll probably need by the end of the show today. We'll probably need that. We'll need that positive to bring us back from the edge of despair. But we'll be visiting with Chris here at the end of the show for this morning. Before we go too far, and I hope you folks in Fairbanks will bear with me for a minute. I'm dealing with something down here for our stations down here on the peninsula and broadcast on translators across the state. We've been simulcasting this radio show on KPEN as well, which is the FM station. It's country station. And one of the things that I did when I took over on the first was that I stopped simulcasting the Charlie Kirk show right after my show. I basically have left my show in place. I've left Chris Story's show in place on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I've received some feedback from some of the listeners that they really miss the Charlie Kirk show on the KPEN station, on the music station. And so I think I'm going to put up a poll on Facebook for listeners to sound off against and tell me whether or not they are okay with just having my show and Chris's show on there, or do they want Charlie Kirk to return to KPEN, Chat FM there. And so that's going to be a question. So if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email and tell me whether you want, whether you'd like to hear Charlie Kirk back on KPEN or not. Just send an email to me, to Michael at myalaskaradio.com. Michael at myalaskaradio.com. And like I said, I think I'm going to put a Facebook poll up later on today on KPEN just to get a feel for it. Because a lot of people, I think, are missing Charlie Kirk and they can't get the AM signal from KGTL. So especially those who are out on translators out in different communities like on Alaska and Kodiak and Delta Junction and stuff like that. So if you want to hear Charlie Kirk on KPEN after my show, please send me an email, Michael at myalaskaradio.com. So that was just a bit of housekeeping, and we'll be putting that up on a Facebook poll later today so that folks can sound off on it and let me know, because I'm considering bringing him back. I was just thinking that people wanted to hear more music, but apparently everybody would like to hear Charlie. And unfortunately, no, the flea market is not coming back. No flea market, no Tradio, no flea market. No, we've got, the times have changed, my friends. That I know is not coming back. So, all right, let's continue on here with some of my thoughts on Brad's pieces of what's happening here. I don't know if it's intentional. I know a lot of people have said, oh, they want to turn Alaska into a national park. Oh, they wanted to, I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just working as, if it's just, this is just how it's working out. But this idea that somehow they're forcing more and more of lower and middle income Alaskans out of the state is, well, it's disconcerting, first of all. Second of all, it's self-defeating because, I mean, what will you have in the long run? I mean, Brad was just talking about it. What will you have if if all the people who are left in the state are simply there to service essentially state government and state industries? That's kind of the direction we're going right now. The state government is so, and I would say that the political leadership, the politicians, they're so out of touch with what's going on in the private economy, that they don't even care. They don't even care that the private economy is struggling, as long as the public economy is going, as long as the government economy is being paid for and employees are getting their golden parachute retirement plans, and as long as teachers and the education industry is being paid for, and as long as all of their stuff is getting paid for, they could just care less about what's happening in the private economy. But that's a very short-sighted vision and viewpoint, because, I mean, what does happen? All of a sudden, you've got a bunch of, well-paid government employees basically running the whole state. And this goes back to my whole doom loop thing again, where you've got a smaller and smaller batch of people to pay for those things. Eventually, what will happen is even those who are in the upper echelons of income, the high 80%, the 90%, they will start to have to feel it, because you will essentially have forced all of the lower and middle income, the blue collar, the working age people out of the state. And as we continue, and as the state continues to spend money, and it just continues to go up, folks, it just continues to increase. We're going to talk in the next segment about the new thing from the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. And this is the same problem that Fairbanks is facing. They're facing almost identical budget deficits at this point. And the people are so disconnected, the legislators, but also the people, the electorate themselves, are so disconnected from what's going on, that they're just like, oh yeah, pay for it. Oh, just give more money from the state. There is not enough money to make all that happen. And it's frustrating to watch. There's just no way to fiscally sustain it. And it is, we could see what's happening. We could see it going on. I mean, Brad and I'm glad he brought those charts in. And for those of you on the radio who didn't see the charts, I recommend you read Brad's column on Friday at the Landmine to take a look at those things, because it's a blatant example of what's happening right now, why people are leaving the state and which ones are leaving the states. It's amazing that this is where we're at. We're going to continue to force, this whole thing with the defined benefits. They keep talking about, the out-migration issue and the hiring issue, and we can't hire people and people are leaving it, but this will fix it. I mean, let's even just assume hypothetically that is the problem. Let's just assume for the moment, for the sake of argument, that the retirement benefits themselves are the major driver in why people are leaving the state, or why people are leaving the state employ, or that they're having a hard time getting new employees. Let's just say for a second that is the truth, right? That's what's going on. Okay. The state employment only accounts for about I mean, between the state and the municipalities who will probably participate, we're talking about 50,000 employees, probably somewhere in that neighborhood, right? Because the state's got like 29,000 employees, something like that. There's probably another 20,000 employees between all the municipalities and the boroughs and the cities and everything. Let's just say it's a roughly 50,000 people. It's probably a little lower than that. But 50,000 people from the workforce is a fraction. I mean, we've got almost 300,000 working age Alaskans in the state. 300,000 roughly, maybe a little more. So even if they were 100% true, which I don't believe it, I don't believe that is the reason why they're having a hard time keeping people or hiring people is because of the retirement benefits. I don't believe that that's the problem. But even if it is the problem and this somehow solves it, it only solves it for 50,000 of the working age Alaskans. That still leaves what, 75% of 80% of Alaskans out in the cold? Of working age Alaskans, they're still going to feel the bite of this. And of course, they have no idea how much this is going to cost. I know they keep saying all the news articles that are talking about the defined benefits plan now are all talking about how Kathy Giesel she's pencil whipped these numbers. She's got them down now. She's going to show us how this is going to save us money in the long run. I just don't believe it. So we're going to expend hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 years if this plan passes, which I think it's going to have a hard time unless the governor stands up to it. But if it passes, we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to protect a very small slice of the working age populace. And again, this is just another example of protecting the public economy at the expense of the private economy. Because all that's going to do, again, is take more money out of the permanent fund dividend, which is going to hurt those working age, working class families more than anybody else. This is a cycle. It's systemic at this point. We can't get away from it. And with all the stuff that Brad was, again, the subsidy, the gas subsidy. We've done so well with subsidies in this state. That tax credit program only cost us $3-4 billion, right? When we did the tax credits for the oil companies. And now we're talking about royalty relief. As Brad points out, royalty relief on a contract that's not even needed on. NSTAR said they're willing to pay the difference if they have to. But hey, might as well ask Uncle Sugar for some more money before we have to pony up. And of course, ignoring the potential of liquefied natural gas imports, because nobody wants to admit that Alaska gas is uneconomical. We've got a gob of it. We've got a ton of it, and it would be great to get it out to where we could use it. We could sell it. We could get it to Tidewater. We could do all those things. Oh, man, it would be great if we could do that. It would also be great if I had a tree out back that grew golden apples, but it's just not going to happen. But here we are. And we've already seen through this last election cycle that there's a whole bunch of people up there who are promising so much to so many, not understanding that we're going into this whole thing with a deficit, and they're just not willing to look at the problem. That's frustrating. It's so frustrating to see. So when you talk to them about it, they just it's Barbara. All right, we got to go. We're up against the break. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff if you want to come on board onto the YouTube channels and the Facebook channels and do all that. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Come out and be part of it with us. The Michael Duke Show. common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Up next, we're going to talk more about the school budgets, this time from the KPB. And boy, there's some doozies in this article, which we're going to read into here. Back with more, The Michael Duke Show.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Let's continue on here. Let's continue on with what we got going on. Let me get caught up in the chat room. Wow, Randy agreed with me. He said, Michael Dukes is right. We should not have defined benefits for government employees. Defined contributions is better. Yeah, I know. Ben Carpenter says, look at how much money is earmarked in the current budget to shore up the current defined benefits retirement system. How much is it, Ben? I don't even know. I haven't even looked lately. But again, we haven't been on defined benefits since what, 2016, 2015? So we're going on almost 10 years. How much money is earmarked, Ben, in that? I'm curious as that. Jeannie says, board member Morgan of the Kenai Peninsula Borough School Board said she could get the KPBSD's budget cuts to within $86K of the $17 million deficit. I smell a shell game coming. Well, I'd like to hear more about that. Maybe we should get her on the program to discuss it with us. Anthony says, uncontrolled growth, rapid destruction of its host, lethal if unchecked, and sometimes still comes back even after it's excised. Two traits shared by the government and cancer. Just saying. You're not wrong. You are not wrong at all. That I was looking for Harold. Harold said something about the doom. Oh, here we go. We're doomed. The Tuesday edition. I mean, I'm not saying that we're doomed. I'm saying that what we're doing could lead to doom. But then Barbara agreed with him and said, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is just so crazy. 2006. Thank you, Donna. 2006. Was that the year that did we move off? Is that when we went to defined contributions? Was 06? I thought it was later than that. But it's a significant amount. Pete says, disclaimer, I work for the school district and my wife is a teacher. The change back to the old retirement system won't keep us or other teachers in Alaska. I mean, again, this is what I've been saying. I don't think this is the problem. I don't think that it's the retirement that's causing the problem for many of these employees, teachers included. But I mean, have we done any analysis? Have we done any exit interviews? Is it the change in the working habits of people? Is it, what's going on? I mean, I agree, Pete. I think that what I'm seeing is that for a fraction of people, and I think Kevin McCabe mentioned that it was like 9% on the exit interview mentioned retirement benefits is one of the reasons why they were leaving. But the biggest ones, upwards of close to 30%, had to do with leadership and the working environment and job descriptions and everything else. Most people don't leave because of the retirement. There's usually a pay issue or a personality issue or personnel issue or a workload issue. There's a lot of other, it doesn't have to do with these other things. It's crazy. Yeah. And then Gerald over on YouTube is talking about the burn bans in Fairbanks, which is just leading to more issue. I mean, that was Man, I fought that issue for 20 years, Gerald. 20 years we fought that issue in the Fairbanks area. And especially when we knew that it was all going on exactly when we needed it the most, during the inversions, during those cold snaps. It's amazing. It's amazing. All right. We're going to continue here in just a moment. We're going to continue here. Yeah, Cindy says that Pete and his wife need to be the kinds of folks that give testimony to the legislators. I agree. All right, we've got to continue on. We're going to jump into this. Hour 2 continues. Chris Story's coming up at the final segment of the show. Up next, we're talking about the KPB and the school district and the budgets. And this is a statewide problem, not just for the KPB. It's an example of what's going on. Let's get to it. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're continuing on right now. The Michael Duke Show. Former Representative Ben Carpenter in the chat room asked a great question when we were talking about this, the public versus private, and I was saying let's just take it as a given that the outmigration or that the employee problems would be solved by fixing the benefits program and everything else. But how much does it cost? He says, look at how much money is earmarked in the current budget to shore up the current defined benefits program, because there's still a defined benefits system right now. Most employees have now cycled out of it, but there's still some employees out there who are on it. And of course, we still have to pay for the people who are currently retired who are on it. And I was like, okay, well, how much is it? Just out of curiosity. $36.1 million based upon the updated actuarials. We're going to pay $36 million this year for a defined benefits program that ended, I guess, almost 20 years ago. Almost 20 years. We're still paying. And I know many municipalities are still paying into their defined benefits that they had for former employees back in the day. Is this really the direction we want? Oh, don't worry. We fixed that problem. It won't happen again. Okay, you tell me how you, Kreskin, hold that crystal ball or that envelope up to your head, and you tell me how much it's going to cost for healthcare in 20 years. That's the problem with defined benefits, is that you're basically saying you're going to get X benefit when you retire in 20 or 30 years or 40 years or however long you are going to get this benefit. And so we're going to predict how much that benefit costs now. And they're wrong. They're always wrong. Some cases badly wrong. And then Pete sounded off in the chat room and said, I work for the school district and my wife is a teacher. He said the change back to the old retirement system won't keep us or other teachers in Alaska. I've been saying that for a long time, but this is really not the problem. Really, this is not the problem. The problem in most jobs has to do with leadership, personality, wages, and job descriptions or workload. That's why most people leave a job. It's just so frustrating. Then I get this article from the Peninsula Clarion. Jacob Dye writes for the Peninsula Clarion over there, talking about the new conversation on the deficit for the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. Now, this is not just a Kenai Peninsula issue. We had Melissa Burnett on the program last week. Wasn't yesterday. It was last week, right? It was last week. I can't even keep track of the days at this point. Melissa Burnett on the program talking about their $16 million deficit in Fairbanks. This is a huge, huge problem. According to the Peninsula Clarion, the school district last year faced a deficit of $13.7 million, and it approved a budget with cuts to staffing positions, deferred payments for curriculum and equipment, and other impacts to extracurricular activities, including closing pools and theaters. Now, those cuts were later reversed after the legislature secured one-time funding, but the school district was still made to significantly draw upon its fund balance. Members of the board said this year's conversations are going to be even more challenging. Why? Well, because this year's budget deficit is $17 million. So they had $13.7 million last year, and then they reversed all those cuts, and now they've got a $17 million one this year. I mean, oof. The finance director presented the preliminary budget to the board last night, or yesterday rather, during a finance committee meeting. She projected for a static BSA, so that the BSA doesn't change, the amount of money that they get for each student, as well as funding from the borough to the maximum amount. The revenues fall short of expenses. That's where the deficit comes in. By the way, salaries and benefits per the presentation represent around 80% of the total expenses, which is on track with what most businesses are. 80% of those costs normally are in personnel. For most businesses, about 80% of the costs are wrapped up, 75 to 80 are wrapped up in personnel costs. This is, I mean, I've got questions. If you've been running a budget deficit for several years, which most school districts in the state have, and you run these budgets, you cut down on the budgets, and then you get the one-time funding and you go ahead and you reverse all those budget cuts, what do you expect is going to happen the next year? Just because you got bailed out this year doesn't mean that you're going to get bailed out next year. Right? Why are you doing this? Why not retain some of those cuts, even if you get more money than you were expecting? Why not retain some of those cuts to lessen the deficit the following year? Because you know it's going to be there still. This is not rocket science. You know it's going to be there still because you're still facing a problem of, generally speaking, fewer students. That's really the big crux to most of these problems, is that most of these places are experiencing a student decline. And they're trying to do the same thing that they've been doing with less money. And it just doesn't work out. They're saying that an increase to the BSA is needed to balance this budget. Now, remember last year they were talking about a $680 BSA increase, $680 per student. But the superintendent said yesterday that even that $680 increase wouldn't be sufficient this year. So even if they've gotten it last year, they'd be coming back to you again this year, hat in hand. I mean, and he quoted the figure of $1,808 per student to match what inflation has stripped away, which is getting pretty close to that 1923, or was it 1963, whatever it is, that Senator Loki Tobin was talking about in her opinion pieces that we're seeing out here. But again, you already made cuts the previous year to cut back on that deficit, to get that $13.7 million. You already made the cuts. Then you got the boatload of money and you're like, oh, we can reverse. Why didn't you keep some of those so that the deficit was even lower this year? Because then you can cut down incrementally year by year and start paring things away as you get fewer students. Why do you just reverse it and then come back next year and act surprised that your budget deficit is even larger? But see, this is not just a problem with school board members or administrators or anything else. This is a people problem. This is an electorate problem. How do I know that? Because the article goes on to talk about how last year they used a piece of software to let the public work on the budget with them as well. To drive the conversation around the budget, the school district will, for the second year, be using Balancing Act. It's a software described accessible in a web browser that gamifies the budget. Users can make their version of a balanced budget and then submit it as feedback to the district. So you can go in there and you could pick and choose, and you can cut and do this and add money and do whatever, and then you submit it to the school board as a comment. Essentially, here's what my budget would be. The software, as of Monday night, has not been launched publicly for this cycle. They said the finance committee is still filling in some questions, like a proposed increase of up to 10 additional students per classroom. Last year, the district's reversed budget cuts included an increase of 1 student per classroom. But here's the kicker. Here's what proves that people are so out of touch with what's going on. And this is the same thing you're seeing in Fairbanks when they start talking about closing schools, and Facebook's explodes with a bunch of people who are weeping horribly about their poor children and being ripped out of their schools and all that other kind of jazz. Here's the kicker. Last year, people using the software overwhelmingly opted to budget for a funding increase from the state, meaning they didn't have to make decisions about what to cut from the budget. They said, the school board said this year, that won't be an option. People will need to make tough choices. Why was that even an option last year? But if the people who are using the software overwhelmingly just went to Uncle Sugar and said, give me some more money, they're totally out of touch. These people who are in these communities who are crying about these school closures, you understand, it's not because they want to close the schools. It's because they have fewer students. Fairbanks had a 15, 16% decrease in student population in a single year. And yet the people on the outside who are gamifying this are like, oh, well, we'll just get more money from the state. You cannot squeeze more blood from that stone, folks. There's going to come a point where there's just not enough. Now, maybe it's not this year. Maybe this year Senator Tobin gets her wish list. PFD's gone, so don't worry about that. But, but this is part of the problem. The people who are being served by this, they don't even understand. They're so disconnected from the cost of their government. They don't even understand how any of that works. They overwhelmingly opted to budget for a funding increase from the state, meaning they didn't have to make the decisions about what to cut from the budget. You're going to have to make the tough choices. Now, this goes double and triple for legislators and school board members and administrators. You're the ones that are getting paid to make these choices. You've got to stop kicking the can down the road, my friends. You got to stop right now and make those hard choices. I mean, the public obviously is not going to do it. All right, we got to go. Chris Story's up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like us out on Facebook, if you would. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. All right. Where I'll go here. Oh, the free money button. The free money button. I know. Who was stupid enough to put that in the budget? You're trying to find budget cut. You're trying to balance the budget. And somebody was smart enough to put a thing in there that says, please press the free money button from Uncle Sugar. They'll take care of it. All right. I'm scrolling down here. Scrolling up rather. Ben Carpenter said KPBSD superintendent received a massive raise last year. This article doesn't mention whether the enrollment in the KPBSD is up or down, but if it's following state trends, I think it's probably down a bit. I don't know. Jeannie said she didn't hear an actual number, but Mr. Holland said his numbers were up, but Zen said they might have to close schools. Melissa said we didn't add back in Fairbanks. The one-time funding, we were still $4 million short. Well, at least you guys are doing that part, at least, Melissa. I mean, why would you make all the cuts to balance out a $13 million shortfall, and then when you got some money, go, oh, good, now we can reverse it all, and we'll start off next year in the hole? I mean, what? Yeah, Harold says, too bad the BSA is looked at as the solution for better schools. It's not. I agree. There was an article, says Melissa, 3 actually in the News Miner Sunday. All 3 said charter schools have better outcomes for the students. Why not revamp and move the charter school model to the bigger school building so the children all have the same opportunity? Because it would take some of the control, because charter schools are run by parents, and it would take a lot of the control out of the hands of the educational complex. That's the problem there. Any good radio stations looking for a great account executive, says Chris. Why are you looking, Chris? Radio stations are always looking for good account executives. I can tell you that from experience, always. All right, let's get Mr. Story on the line, shall we? Shall we get him on the phone? The blower. Let's go. Come on. Didn't work. Let me call you back. All right, I'm going to call Chris back. I don't know what's going on here. I hate that. I hate it when that happens. Let's try this one more time. Come on. Come on, baby. Hold together. There we go.
All right. Second time's a try.
It worked that time. It worked that time. All right, you ready, Mr. Story? You all good to go?
Born ready.
Born ready. Born on time and on purpose. Oh man. I just accidentally deleted something that I wasn't supposed to delete. Okay, let me do this. HomerAlaska.com. Chris Story. I hate it when that happens. Let's just do that right there. Okay. All right, Mr. Story, I am ready if you're ready. What's our topic for today?
The 4 whys of life.
The 4 whys of life. Okay, for a second there, I thought you said the 4 wives of life, and I'm like, one is enough.
Oh.
Who needs more than one?
Speaking of which, American Primeval, highly recommend on Netflix.
I saw the splash screen or whatever for it, and I went and looked at it. I haven't looked at the trailer yet, but interesting. 1850 something in
50 something, yeah.
Yeah, in the
Utah.
West or something. But
Utah.
A good watch, huh? Oh, it's in Utah. So the Mormons are out there. That's why the wives thing got you. Okay, I got it. We'll check it out. I'll check it out. All right. So the 4 whys of life. All right, I'm going to put Chris back on.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to put Chris back on hold here while I go back through here and see what I can fix. Why is that not working now? So irritating when something doesn't work when it's supposed to, right? I mean, it's just so frustrating. Okay. We'll just continue on. Here we go. Chris Story is our guest, the man from Homer. He's going to be with us here, and we're going to jump into this and hopefully get a little bit of positivity for our weekday after we just got the hell kicked out of us by Brad Keithley. So let's jump into that, shall we? The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things. Only 19 of you have liked this show today. I don't know why. Yeah, Story's trying to take Willie Waffle's job. I saw that. I was paying attention to it. All right, here we go. Jumping back into it. Let's do it right now.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Yeah, the one with the show. That's me. Well, actually, it's Chris, too, because he has a show as well. You can listen to Chris' story every Tuesday and Thursday on KGTL and KPEN across the peninsula and all the way out to Dutch Harbor, Kodiak, Delta Junction. He's everywhere. He's worldwide. He's famous. Chris Story, realtor, potter, author, down to earth guy. And he is coming in today to talk to us a little bit, give us a little bit of a PMA boost, a little bit of life coaching on the 4 whys of life. Not the 4 wives, because that's too confusing. The 4 whys of life. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Fantastic. As I told you a moment ago, I was born for this. I feel like that this moment, I've been waiting for this moment my entire life.
This specific moment right here.
Yes.
Okay.
The one I was just talking about.
Oh, the one, and now this one, and probably the next one as well.
We'll see.
We'll see how you feel. So, Chris, we try on this program every Tuesday to make people stop and think about their lives and where they're at. And if they're unhappy, why are they unhappy? And if they want to do better, if they want to do more in life, some analysis and everything. So it always busts back to a little bit of self-analysis. So do the 4 whys of life, do we start in that area? Are we looking at ourselves and looking at our analysis of where we're at in our life?
This is an incredible time of year. Every January, a majority of people start to really think about the year ahead. We've just said goodbye to the year prior. Now we're looking at the year ahead. But here's sort of a wake-up call. We're already effectively halfway through the first month of the year. So the question is, what will 2025 be for you? Who will you be? Who are you today? And who will you be at the end of this year? And so let's just pretend that we're looking back at 25. It's January 14th, 2026. I was 25. What happened this year for you, to you? Who were you? Who did you become? And what did you do, accomplish? Where did you go? All these kinds of things that come down to what we put under the umbrella of New Year's resolutions, goal setting, all of that. So Jim Rohn had a great view of life, a farm boy from Iowa, as he would tell you, but truly a philosopher in his own right, and maybe one of the few modern day business philosophers that will, I think, stand the test of time, and we'll still be talking about him 100 years from now. He said that there's 4 whys you should be asking yourself. And January is the perfect time to ask them. And the first question is, why? So ask that question against anything you want to do or think you want to do. Why? What's your motivation? Why do you want to why do you want to go there? Why do you want to accomplish something? That's an incredibly powerful question. And when you ask it honestly of yourself or of somebody you're working with in a goal setting session or just your partner in life, why? Like, why do you want to do this? And if you ask it enough times and then an answer comes and then you ask it again, there's this thing called the 7 levels of why. And you just keep asking why and why. By the 7th why, you'll typically have honed or distilled down to the real underlying motivation, because it may be different than when you said, oh, I want to earn X dollars this year. I want to accomplish this. I want to weigh this. I want to go to this place. I want to do this thing. I want to write this book. I want to read this book, or whatever it is. By the 7th level of that why, you'll truly understand the deeper meaning, what's behind the stated goal or mission. So that's the first why, is literally why.
Why do you feel the way you feel, or why do you want to do the things you do? Is that essentially it?
Yeah. Why? Oh, I want to earn $1 million. Why? Well, it's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Why? Why do you want to earn? Why $1 million? Why I want it, whatever it is. And you get to you start to distill down and boil down to what really you might want is freedom. You might want choices that you don't today have. You might want something that maybe you need that $1 million, or maybe something else will come out of it. That actually, the truth of it is, I just want to be able to go do this thing. Okay, couldn't you do it today? Or it kind of leads you to understanding your own motivations better. So that's the first why. The second why, when you're relating it to something accomplished, do, be, have, is why not? Why not? Why not do this thing? Why not have this? Why not make that money? Why not make this commitment? Why not? And then when you start to think in those terms, it's like, well, yeah. Because a lot of times I think we have this disbelief and we have to suspend it a little bit. Like, well, who am I? And that imposter syndrome that we all face, every single person. And if you meet somebody who says, well, I don't face it, they lie about other things too. We all face that. So why not? Why shouldn't you do this? Why not you? That's the third why, is why not you? So we ask why of ourselves. Why do you want to do whatever it is? Why not? And then why not you? Because that really starts to defeat that imposter syndrome. That really starts to defeat the voice in the back of your mind, be it still small or very large, loud. It starts to defeat that undermining questioning of your
Well,
own abilities or worth.
you and I know what. Can you describe imposter syndrome for those that may have never heard that phrase before, or what it means? Because I think you and I understand it in the context, it makes sense. But can you explain when you say people have imposter syndrome? Most people, I think all people at one point or another face it. What can you describe what it is in your mind?
I'll give you Seth Godin's description of it. And I interviewed him recently, and he's the author of over 20 books. And one of his most recent books is called This is Strategy. And he talks about an imposter syndrome is when you feel like you're not large enough, or maybe this is really, who am I to have this thing or do this thing or say this thing? And you start to question your own right to take the stage of whatever life happens to be handing you at that moment or you're doing. And you don't feel, I'm not really large enough to do it. I'm not educated. For me, it was having a GED, and I eventually called it a PhD GED. Like, I understood for a long time that, oh, I'm not educated. I don't have it. I didn't even graduate high school. Who am I to say this or that? And then I grew into the position of, wait a minute, I have expertise in the following things. I've read over 1,000 books postgraduate. I am self-educated, and I had to own that position in my own mind. But for a long time, the imposter syndrome that lived in my mind and on a repeat loop was, you didn't graduate, you don't have an education, you didn't go to college, who are you? And then so that imposter I had to actually kill off by recognition and self-awareness that, oh, I've actually grown into a larger position in my own mind than I thought I was capable of. And so Seth Godin describes imposter syndrome as whenever you're headed towards something new, everybody feels a little inadequate or not necessarily capable of something when you're headed in a new direction. This is a good thing. Embrace it, dance with it, say, oh, I'm feeling nervous or uncomfortable. They're like, oh, I've got a bit of an imposter. Who am I to take this on? Excellent. That means you're growing and you're going in the right direction.
So why not? And then why not you, obviously, is what takes the slings and arrows to the imposter syndrome, so that you could say, hey,
Yes.
why not you? And like you said, you just outlined, and I think in your book, The Backyard Millionaire, the main character has to take and write a list of things that he is good at. And I think that's a way to riddle it full of bullets, to say, hey, you do know this, you have read, you do know other languages, you do know whatever it is that you can write down there. Those are all reasons to know that you're not an imposter. You do have expertise in what's going on.
Absolutely. And or have the right, and you deserve the opportunity, and you deserve your shot, and you should take your shot. And that's finally the last why, according to Jim Rohn, is why not now? And so what are you waiting for? It's January 14th as you and I communicate today. Why not now? What are you waiting for? Failure to launch is no excuse from last year. Oh, I should have done it. No, shoulda, woulda, coulda. It doesn't matter. The Chinese said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now, today. Plant your flag. Write down your own personal inventory, which is what you just referenced. Oscar, the mentor in the book, talks about taking a personal inventory, sit down with a scrap piece of paper and just write down all the skills and gifts and abilities and talents and things you've done or can do, have read, will be reading. Maybe you've, written something you're very proud of. Put everything down from learning to tie your shoes. My youngest grandson is 4 years old, and watching him begin to master every little thing and the accomplishment, the look of just like pride on his face when he accomplishes something or says something or masters even the intonation of a joke that he makes the room laugh. And it's like we all have these small little things that we've accomplished throughout our life. And I think we take them for granted sometimes or brush them under the rug. So why not? Why not you? Why not now? This 2025 could be the best year of your life. How do you know?
Right.
Why not? Why not assume that it will be?
Right. So again, to summate, the 4 whys are
why? Why do you want to do something? Well, why not?
right.
Why not you? You're deserving of it. And why not now? Start now. Don't wait. Because I truly believe, like my new coin for this year is emblazoned on the front of it above the pyramid with the globe. It says Viva Propósito, which means live with purpose. Live with purpose now, right now. Don't wait. Nobody's coming for you. You have to go after what it is you want. Rarely does success interrupt you sitting on the couch, as Jim Rohn also used to say.
Right. Well,
and success leaves clues.
Yeah, you got to live on purpose, right? You can't just live. If you live, you're just kind of wandering through life. If you live life with a purpose and on purpose, then you have a definite direction and an aim, and you can actually, there's nothing worse than kind of just going along and being like, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what's going. But if you're at least moving in a direction, you can at least, even if you go backwards, you can at least check the progress on the bar. You know what I mean? And be like, okay, I'm leveling up. I'm moving on to the next thing.
Couple things to do early in the year. I think read biographies. I'm reading one on Walter Winchell right now, great radio broadcaster and journalist, and I'm reading one on the In-N-Outs of In-N-Out Burger, the founding of In-N-Out Burger, according to the granddaughter of the founder, Lindsay Schneider. I don't care about it. I've eaten an In-N-Out once in my life. I don't care. I love biographies, and we can learn so much about what other people would have had no business starting something amazing, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Living life on purpose. Why? Why do you want to do it? Why not? Why you and why now? These are questions you should be asking yourself every morning as you look yourself in the mirror and just say, why not? Just get to it. Just get on it. Chris Story, the man from Homer, today at 1 p.m. on KGTL and KPEN down on the peninsula if you want to listen to him as well. Thanks, Chris, for coming on board. As always, my friend, it's good to hear from you.
Happy New Year.
Find his books at ilovehomeralaska.com. Out of time, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. All right. Any final thoughts, Chris, since you're still with us this morning, since you're hanging out here?
Hey, Michael. Yeah, thanks. It was fun. I think, I'm really enjoying this conversation I'm having with people all around the state, and my primary focus on the FAIR Act, new tax reform for property taxes here on the peninsula. I'm writing a new piece I didn't get a chance to finish it this week, so I won't submit it to the Homer News and Greg Sarber's Stewart's Folly Substack until probably next week. But that is if you'll take it. But it's going to be called 3,000 Years a Slave. I feel now more than ever like we will accomplish this new way here in Alaska, be it around the state or just here on the peninsula, of tax reform, property tax reform. And the notion is that an assembly member told me that in defense of property tax, the way it's currently established is that property tax has been in existence since 3000 BC. So, or for 3,000 years anyway, I think is this exact quote. It's like, okay, all right, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Slavery was very popular 3,000 years ago. You may be aware of this.
I was just going to say,
it's how the pyramids were built. And,
yeah.
There was no America. There was no democracy. There was no freedom or independence or liberty or America. So this will be the thesis my next piece.
I can't wait to hear about it. Maybe we'll have to have you back on next week after you've got it out there and published it, and we can talk about the Fair Act some more. All right. Well, thank you, my friend.
Michael.
Appreciate you coming on board. As always, it's good to talk with you. All right, folks, be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. See you tomorrow.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.